Forum Borealis. Paradigm Expansion.
Greetings from the north and welcome to Forum Borealis. Today we finally have a new episode in our Dissident series, and I'm going to present for you a heroic Norwegian woman whom you'd be wise listening to, as she can give you first-hand witness report about vastly suppressed matters. Our guest is Kari Jaquesson, a famous fitness coach, aerobics instructor, journalist, and TV personality. She is the daughter of Nils Manuel Jaquesson, a well-known entrepreneur in the restaurant sector in Oslo. She has 30 years experience with fitness, diet, health, motivation, and lifestyle. In the 80s, she founded the first educational system for aerobics instructors in Norway. She still teaches advanced classes around the country in step and fitness, among else at the national gym chain Elixia, and is the most sought-after coach in the field. Her philosophy is that anyone ought reach their optimal condition without being pressured into a predefined ideal. Furthermore, she's a well-known lecturer and speaker who can touch, move, and inspire, frequently hired to seminars, congresses, kickoffs, and corporate courses. A saying about her is that she can motivate a stone to trim. Since 1994, she's been profiled at the major Norwegian media house TV2 and been a regular feature in Good Morning Norway. She's also worked for other major TV stations and a large number of famous programs. She's also been featured as guest, contestant and participant in several Norwegian prime TV programs and reality shows. In 2000, Jaquesson was appointed as Goodwill Ambassador for United Nations Population Fund and worked nationally and globally to increase awareness of women's health rights until 2009. She's also been an ambassador for the health industry and organizations concerned with cancer, heart, and pneumonic causes. She's been a board chair for Sex and Politics, ambassador for Fair Trade, and a co-founder and board member of Gifts, who facilitate children's football in Africa. She's been an engaged social commentator, women's rights champion, and front-page model for the Norwegian magazine Man. Kari has published 6 fitness videos and 8 books on exercise, diet and lifestyle, of which several bestsellers. She's a recognized journalist for many fitness magazines and websites in the Nordic countries. She also arranges trim and well-being journeys abroad. Her motto is, "Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something." A few years ago, she got engaged in the political scene, to the great annoyance of the establishment, since she was a popular and outspoken celebrity, known for her no-nonsense approach, always speaking from her heart. Her dissident voice has been a disturbing mosquito to the mainstream propaganda. She's journeyed to the Middle East several times, even visiting Syria twice during the war, and engaged with the local population as well as officials, volunteers and international independent journalists. She has been frank and loud about what she has learned, tearing down the official image piece by piece. Due to this, she has felt the wrath of the elite and their media henchmen, who have tried to ignore her, silence her, and ridicule her to no avail. For this very reason, we are honored to give her a platform at our show to shout to the entire world the incredible contrast that truth is to the mainstream media narrative about the war industry, the demolition of secular Middle Eastern countries, and their facilitation and proliferation of terrorism around the world in general, and Syria in particular. Her information is fact-based, so everything we discuss in today's show can be verified by anyone who are not too lazy. You know, today ignorance is a choice, unless you're in prison. One more note. As you know, I am used to interview people all over the globe and rarely have had problems with the line when speaking with people from Tasmania to Arizona. But incidentally, now that both of us were in Norway, unfortunately there's weird disturbances of unknown origin on the sound throughout the show, with occasional choppings and cuts of words and sentences. For the most part, it does not ruin your ability to catch what is being said, and we have also tried our best to smooth it in editing. And by the way, we didn't hear any of this at the line when we spoke, so it went straight into the recording. I hope you are not put off from it, because the information aired is so important and already too censored for such a trivial cause to stop it coming out. If you're with us on this, you will be in for a very interesting and enlightening discussion. In part 1, we hear the truth about Syria, and in part 2, we discuss the deeper aspects, such as the utterly bankrupt media and their fabrication of lies and censorship of truth, the corrupt neocon and neolib politicians whoring for the war industry, and the dangerously amok intel agencies' manufacturing of terrorism. All three elements which are essential for the globalist hegemony of the world today. Welcome, Kari.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you here today. I have to tell you before we begin that you're one of my heroes in this country.
Oh, really?
Yes, really.
Wow.
I so admire you. See, what our audience doesn't know, despite the introduction I gave you, is that I mean, it's not an inflation to say that you are actually a very famous, I guess celebrity is the word, for your fitness and health career.
Yeah.
And then you just, out of nowhere, I mean, that's probably the last person one would think would become a, whistleblower, truth seeker, honest journalist. And then you just, bam, went straight into that thing. And that's not the point. The point is what it cost you. And we were just talking about it before we started here, that everybody started to attack you when they realized, Jesus, this girl, she has a voice. People know her, and now she's saying these things that we can't have out there, the things that mainstream media never. And probably you didn't know it, probably you were just honest and naive, but you attracted their wrath. And because of that, and you riding the storm, all that stuff is so kudos. It's incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But, actually, I've had a lot of... let's call it by its right name, crap sent my way. But also, and these are the things that you don't see in the media, several times a week, I have people coming up to me who wants to shake my hand. They thank me for what I've done. They thank me for being so clear and, telling them things that they can't see or hear in the mainstream media. And I have young people coming up to me asking for advice on what I suggest they should read to be more updated. So actually, the media only allows certain voices to be heard, and obviously they are the ones critiquing me, but out on the street, by mail, phone, I get a lot of credit. Yeah, and a lot of people are really hungry for more information,
They are, and they don't have that many outlets. We're one of them. You see, in my view, Syria, the Syria condition is what we could call a smoking gun when it comes to understanding the horror show that is our contemporary media, because people live as if the media was back in the 70s, and people still believe that's how the media is.
Yeah.
And that's how it's the same with the democracy. They present everything as if it is how it was, without people realizing it's been taken over. And I think your explanation of the Syria thing is kind of the smoking gun. You only need that to realize how far the whole thing is tilted, how utterly constructed, and it's incredibly serious, folks. So you'll hear today, we're going to start now just by talking about, you're going to present us now how Syria, what's the condition there really is, what the country is all about, and when people who doesn't know anything about it hear this, they're going to be so mind blown.
Yeah.
That they're going to realize how serious the whole thing is. And that's why they need to crush people like you, Eva Bartlett, and several other independent journalists, because it's the smoking gun. If people just, they don't even need to know anything about Daesh, about Israel. They just need to know the truth about how Syria is. When they do that alone, then they realize, oh my God, what's going on?
But you know,
you see what I mean?
Yeah, but they don't even need to know a single thing about Syria. Actually, I will be more than happy to talk about Syria, because just to counter the fake image that has been presented, and very narrow image that has been presented in the media. But actually, and you talked about the media having changed, but has it really, or is it just that we have begun to understand how it works? Because you can go back to any war, even the First World War, and you will see the role of the media played. I remember what I was taught about the First World War in school, and everything is a lie. Later, I've been doing my own research into it, and especially looked at the way the media use, the propaganda use of the media, and especially the British media. Yeah. And it's just exactly the same. There is no difference. It's just that what has changed is internet. We, the normal people, the ordinary citizens, we can communicate at a speed which up until now they haven't been able to stop. They're trying. They're doing everything they can to hinder us from exchanging information.
Indeed.
But the further I do research into earlier conflicts, it's the same story again and again. It's just incredible, and it's very painful, because I started to be interested, especially when Israel bombed Lebanon back in 2006. Mm-hmm. And then, well, obviously the Iraq invasion, which I was just amazed. I remember I met a fellow, I used to work in a TV station in Norway, and I met...
That's right, TV2, right?
Yeah, well, but this was another TV station. At that time I was doing a project for TV Norge, but it doesn't matter. I met one of the people who were going to work on a show. We were going to make a pilot. And I said, wow, and she's a journalist. She's an educated journalist, although she works with, lighter stuff. And I said, wow, it's just incredible. It's horrible what they're doing to Iraq. And she said, yeah, but they must be really glad to get rid of him. He is so bad and mean. I said, are you serious? Are you crazy?
They were referring to Saddam, or?
Saddam Hussein, yeah. And I couldn't believe the way Norwegians, they just had bought all the vilification of Saddam Hussein. Like, oh yeah, we're going to save the Iraqi people. Although there was a huge resistance against, we were like, I don't know, maybe 150,000, maybe I'm exaggerating, but one of the biggest demonstrations ever was in 2003.
I remember this. There was first well-organized anti-war demonstrations ever, and it started where the sun rises, some of those islands in the Pacific, and it ended, I think Hawaii was the last place it ended, and the world has never seen so many people out in the street ever. There were millions. Millions. There were record numbers everywhere, England, you name it. And the interesting thing is, this was right before the internet. So we organized got all these people out against Bush, against war. Despite, we didn't have the tools like internet back then.
Exactly. But where are the people now, right?
I'd say they are more asleep after that than they were then.
Yeah.
I'd say Libya is a worse example.
Yeah, and I did a lot of blogging or some blogging when the Libya thing started because about 6 or 8 months before they started, I heard an interview on the radio with a doctor. Obviously, they always use doctors because they're so reliable, right, as witnesses. And I told my partner at that time, I said, because he had lived in Libya, he actually done the walk through the Sahara and gone into Libya and had a great time in Libya. And I told him, hey, that's a Libyan. A Libyan doesn't speak English like that. Come and listen to this. Right. And I knew something was up. And I really followed it really closely. And I couldn't believe, what happened. And that Norway, my home country, bombed. We're having a sort of process now where they're making a public investigation. But it was insane. But the big difference between Libya and Syria is that the lies came out, now how long is it? It's like 10 years since Libya. I don't remember. Yeah, no, it's like 7 years.
Yeah, not as much as 10.
Yeah, but it was so quick. And Syria was prepared. Yeah. Although they, before the Russians came in to help, they were in a really bad state. But they knew what was at stake much more. Because the Syrians have been so... they've really managed to protect their country for so long. The lies are coming out before the war is finished. The lies have been exposed because this. You
mean the truth?
Yeah, the truths have been. Yeah, exactly. The truth is coming out. The lies have been exposed because they have been so. The persistence of the Syrian people is just amazing. They've really...
I know. And you know what? I think we'll start there, actually. I think you'll start educating or schooling us on facts about Syria. Because to the general Norwegian, but certainly the general American.
Yeah.
And I'm not referring to you listeners, okay? I know you listeners are brighter than...
But can I just say, can I make a request?
Sure.
Because you have most certainly listeners who are way over the main, the middle America knowledge. And please spread the news. Do it in a smart way because people don't like to be told that they're stupid. But if you can just become an ambassador and find a sly way, not sly, but, like a smart way to make people more curious. Oh, it would be wonderful. If each of your listeners could reach 10 people, that would be amazing.
Yeah, let's just ask them to reach, let's see, 3 people.
Okay, I'm ambitious.
But the title of the show it's an example of that. It's going to be called? Did I tell you?
No.
Okay. What the Shamestream media won't tell you about Syria.
Yeah.
It's true, but it's also clickbait. And let us make it very clear. You have been on the ground. You've talked with ordinary Syrians.
Yeah.
Many, many people. You met them. I mean, you're not paid by anyone to say these things.
No.
Etc. People need to understand where you're coming from.
Yes, I'm completely independent.
Yeah. It's like someone came to where I'm at now and talked with me, and I said, yes, this is what's going on in this country.
Yes.
I would rather believe that than someone who's paid by the authorities.
Yes. I have no dog in the fight, as they say. So last year I went to Damascus, Malula, which is a mainly Christian village that was severely hit, where they destroyed, the oldest churches in the world are in Syria.
Yeah.
So the terrorists, they burned, looted, killed Christians, kidnapped nuns.
Invaluable cultural treasures gone lost.
Exactly. So I was there. Malula is a place where they still talk. They speak the same language like Jesus.
Yeah, Aramaic.
Yeah. And I went to Aleppo and to Homs. So I went in many different places. This year I was only in the Damascus region because my stay was a little bit shorter. The first time I paid everything myself. The second time I did a crowdfunding. I asked people help. So ordinary people, they helped me finance the trip. So I'm 100% independent. And I could walk wherever I wanted. I could talk to whomever I wanted. We did not have like a weapon, armed guard or anything like that. Like last year, we were a group of international people who met through Facebook. We organized ourselves. We came to Beirut.
How were we received by local people?
Oh, amazing. People are so happy that we came, and that's what everybody, you'll find a lot of people who have gone to Syria independently. They will all tell you the same thing. But even parliamentarians, some European parliamentarians have gone. They all have the same experience.
Despite the blockage?
Yeah. They are interested. They want to tell their story. They are welcoming. The hospitality is just amazing. So I really urge people to go. Americans definitely should go. Americans need to travel more anyway. They need to challenge.
Yeah. They won't even get a passport. They're living in their own prison over there,
Yeah, it's actually, I think, the only country where the government prohibits people from going places.
Yep.
I don't know of any other country. But please, Americans, travel. You have no idea how well you will be received, and you will see a different world. Because I've lived in the United States. I've lived there. I was an exchange student there for a year.
Oh, where did you
live?
live?
And I've been in New Jersey.
Right.
Yeah, and I've been to United States at least 12, 15 times. I have countless things because
Sure.
I have lots of friends there. I've gone to fitness conventions there because of my work, and I know it quite well. I mean, not mid-America, but East Coast and some of the South. And, most Americans are nice people.
Especially rural Americans, I say.
Yeah, and I really believe that Americans think that the government is trying to save people in other parts of the world. Many think so, but listen, it's a lie. They never do.
Especially the neoliberal stooges. But let's start with that. Educate us, because the general idea is that Syria is it's a bunch of black-clothed, this, fanatical.
Exactly. And it is in the areas that gets financial support from the West. That's the crazy part. If you look at the people, right now there aren't that many areas under siege.
No, let's start with how Syria was before all this shit happened.
Oh, okay. Unfortunately, I was supposed to go to Syria in 2008, I think, because one of my clients, my fitness clients, she used to live there. And she told me how wonderful it was. And it was just amazing. And I was but Lebanon was on my list first. And then I was supposed to go to Syria. But then that didn't happen. And then, the whole propaganda thing started, and I got in touch with people, and I started to research Syria, and I looked at the material that people were shown and the rhetoric. So most people think there's only one person living in Syria, and that's Assad. Because one of the first things you do when you want to demonize a country and make it easy to attack and make people accept that you attack is to make a country into one person. So Syria becomes Assad, Russia becomes Putin, Venezuela becomes Maduro. Yeah, we're going to sanction Assad. No, in Syria there are 23 million people. 23 million people. So compared to Norway, it's quite a big population. We are only 5 million, but Syria itself as a country is quite small. It's less than half of the surface of Norway, and more than half of it is desert. So it's quite densely populated. And the capital, Damascus, is 10,000 years old, and it has been inhabited for 10,000 years uninterrupted.
Yeah.
There's no other city like that in the world. So you can imagine that the history and the civilization is so old and it's so sophisticated. And what's amazing for me, because I've been to Syria twice now, both times during the war, once in April 2017 and once recently in April this year.
So brave.
The level of sophistication and knowledge among anyone you meet about the civilization, the culture, the poetry, the art, history is amazing. If you meet a regular Norwegian or American, they don't really know anything about their country.
No, and I think very powerful is visuals, but there's very little coming out of Syria when it comes to that. But I have to say, just a basic thing, there's so many ethnic groups who live there. There's so many religions. People don't even know that. I think even the Druze, Syria.
Oh, yeah.
Syria has Druze too, right? Not just Israel and Lebanon.
Yeah. It's you have all sorts of Christians, different type of Christian beliefs, Catholic, Orthodox, Protestants, all types. You have Sunni Muslims, Shia, you have Armenians, you have
Armenic and Coptic.
Yeah, Druze. You had now I think there are not a lot of Jews, but actually on the street that I live, there's a Jewish store.
Okay.
But this is particular for Syria now, but that used to be the norm in that region until the colonizers came.
And Assad and his family isn't even Sunni or...
Yes, his wife is Sunni, yeah. His wife Sunni, and he himself is Alawite.
Alawite, right? And Alawite is a minority even within Shia.
Yeah, and that's the main object of hatred of the terrorists are the Alawites. I have a personal friend who was in Theyre, where the whole thing started, and he was in the army and as a doctor. He's a medical doctor, so he was working in the hospital in Theyre, and he said, when the demonstration started, there were no cries for democracy or anything like that. It was the Alawites to the grave and the Christians to Beirut. What they were shouting for was a genocide. And it shouldn't come as a surprise because, most of the terrorist groups, they are different, but it doesn't really matter what name they choose. It's the same thing. It's just a game with the alphabet. But they all have different sponsors, and many of them have been directly sponsored by Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, we'll get to who's behind the fundamentalists.
Yeah, they're just hatred for anything Shia. It comes from the Saudi family.
It does, and we're gonna get to the bastards.
Yeah.
I call Saudi Arabia Satan's Vatican on earth, but we'll get back to that. I want you to tell us a little more about how the condition of Syria. I mean, how is it for women? How was it for schooling? All that stuff. The secularism. Just let people understand this.
Yeah, it's secular, but not anti-religious, because a lot of people seem to think that in a secular-run country there's no religion, but there's definitely freedom of faith. Yeah. But Syrians don't talk about that. They don't divide their people into sectarian groups. Everybody told me it's always been regarded as completely impolite, like something you just don't do to ask people what sort of religion they have. It doesn't matter. They are all Syrians. And it's this pan-Arabic mentality that also used to be dominant in Iraq before the invasion. I have been told. I haven't been to Iraq, so this is just something people have told me. But you have to understand that Syria has been the object of so many attacks. I mean, practically everyone has tried to colonize, has also been colonized, for example, by the French. So there are a lot of older Syrians who speak perfect French.
Right.
But the thing is, and this is something that really made me, I liked the way he was a Baptist priest that I met last year in Aleppo. And he said, in Syria, we don't have any minorities. Everyone's majority.
Okay.
So, and also the way that President Assad, he doesn't talk about so-called minorities, something to tolerate. It's part of Syria. It's a total different mentality. So all this divide and rule sectarianism that the West is trying to use to split Syria, because that's the big plan, is completely in opposition to the Syrian culture.
We'll get to that, but it's the only Arabian country without state religion, right?
Yes, it is, absolutely. And you can feel it because, for example, I was in a restaurant in Damascus when I was there a few months ago, and there were two big parties. One was a communion, I don't know if that's the way to say it in English, a Christian family who celebrated the communion of their daughter, and they were Christians. And on the other big table there was a birthday party when you saw that they were Muslim, because some of the women had headscarf and some didn't, and they were just
so they can intermarry freely without a problem between religions.
Yeah, there's been some kind of legislation. There's been some kind of, not obstacle, but less smooth operation to that before. But this is a law that's now changing to make it easier, because you had to marry in the religious institutions before, and now they're working on abolishing that so that it's just the state. To free people furthermore from this type of cultural and religious thing. But there are, interracial, interreligious marriages, as has been the case, for example, in North Africa before, for centuries. Right. It was quite ordinary for Muslims and Jews to be married, or Muslims and Christians, no problem. So, and also the one thing that strikes you when you come to Syria, as a few other countries in the world, is the absence of globalism. Right. And this is striking because we are so used to it our societies, these days, it doesn't matter if you're in Budapest or in San Francisco, it looks pretty much the same commercial-wise, right? You have the same chains, the same everything. But in Syria and in Iran, may I add, you don't have that. If you can go through a street with, let's say, there's a neighborhood for stereo, like all the shops are selling electronics, stereos. You can have like 100 shops, and each shop is privately owned.
Right.
And this is a lovely thing that we've lost.
Yeah.
And it gives you a sense that it's quite difficult to describe with words, but you feel like you're in another world, a nicer world.
Yeah, because that's how capitalism was intended, like a free market. They talk about the free. We haven't had a free market ever. I'm not even talking about social democracy. I'm talking in big capitalist countries like America. It's corpocracy. It's monopoly. And when you have the big corporations taking over globalization, then you lose that direct connection, that you get between person to person. If you have a real market, it's like a marketplace, right?
Yeah.
So everybody has something to sell and offer, and that's connecting people. That's democracy, because then people can decide. But when you have this globalization, and that's the clue, I think, the fact that Syria hasn't been victim for that yet is one of the reasons they won't take them. And you said something very interesting in your lecture. You said that tell us about the food situation before we go to the politics.
Yeah, so it's important to know that Syria has been under severe sanctions since 2011. And I want to just remind people of the horrible sanctions that Iraq suffered.
People don't even understand what that is. What does that even mean?
Because that's exactly. People think that, sanctions, right, so they can't buy, computers. If you try to read the documents describing the sanctions, you might just as well commit yourself to an asylum, because you are going to go crazy. Because the evilness of the detailing of the sanctions makes you wonder about humanity, because every little aspect of society is being targeted. You have the prohibition of import and export, which means you can't take any money out and you can't get in. For example, I'll give you just a trivial example. When I was recently, I got myself a Syrian phone number, a SIM card. And I wanted to download in another second phone, and I wanted to download some apps. Syria doesn't even exist. You can't use App Store in Syria because of the sanctions. They won't let you. You can't use your credit card anywhere, so you have to have cash with you at all times. Politicians, scientists, everybody's prohibited from traveling. They can't enter any other country. There's no planes going in and out of most airports. It's like sealing off the country.
It's like making Syria into a concentration camp, right?
That's exactly it. Syria used to export medicine to 100 countries. They were self-sufficient. They exported cheap medicine to 100 countries before the crisis and before the sanctions. And now children are dying because the sanctions prohibits the import of certain ingredients to make medicine, or even the medicines. So, and I want people to think about that. These are, they say they sanctioned the regime. That's what they say. The so-called regime, I'm putting quotation marks here, are the last people to be hit by sanctions. And they say themselves. I was in a meeting last year with the media counselor of President Assad, Butena Shaban, and she said so. It's so evil, because it's the most vulnerable people of our society who are most suffering from these sanctions. We are not suffering. We are,
obviously.
We're on top of the food chain here. So. And at the same time, because, one of the main sources of information, I'm again using quotations mark on information, from Syria to the mainstream media has been the white helmets. Yeah.
Oh my God, we'll get to that.
No, I have to say this now, because they have received hundreds, millions of dollars in support from United States and Britain mainly, but also other countries, because they save lives. Okay, so with one hand, you're sanctioning the 90% of the Syrian people. You're making them starve. The hospitals, they can't, let's say just a machine to do dialysis. Is that the word in English?
Dialysis. Yeah.
For kidney, people suffering for kidney disease, they can't buy the little screw missing. They can't buy it because then if a company sells something to Syria, they can have, in the United States, millions in fines and 25 years in prison. It's very strict.
Wow.
So they can't, even if they wanted to, they can't do it.
Can you give it for free?
Probably not. I mean, the sanctions are so detailed.
Yeah.
You could probably go there and have them in your pocket, but you can imagine a country with over 20 million people, you need stuff, right?
Of course.
You need stuff. But at the same time, they claim that they want to support the white helmets for saving lives. That one piece of information will tell you what a big lie and bluff the white helmet concept is. And still people believe it.
Oh yeah, I mean it's founded by British intelligence, MI5 or 6.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's not even a Syrian nation, but just the fact that they're highlighting them as an organization who is saving lives, and at the same time they're trying to kill and starve 20 million people. You see, it doesn't add up.
No.
So if only people, and the presentation that I had here in Norway recently, my main message was think for yourself. Look at the information and think for yourself, because all the information I gave in that presentation are fact-based, verifiable information, and it doesn't add up.
It doesn't, and the gap between the facts and the propaganda is so huge that it's
but it's so easy. But people are so afraid even to look at it, because it hurts when you understand that our politicians are lying us straight up in the face. That's painful, and I really understand that, because once you were talking about the 70s and democracy and this and that, and of course we're all raised, especially in the West where we think that we live in democracies, we have a certain notion of what our society is. That's what we've been told. And once you start to realize that it's not like that, it's physically painful. People have a lot of resistance. They just can't make themselves believe. The whole world falls down, everything you've been taught.
I mean, and that's why you get so much aggression from people too, because you become you become the messenger of bad news, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to hear that I have cancer, so let's attack the doctor or the mailman who tells me this. They're in denial.
But, people need to see, because there's austerity politics being this all over Europe and certainly in the United States, So people are being robbed, and it's important for people to realize the connection between all these wars that are filling the pockets of filthy rich people and their own difficult living conditions.
Yeah.
Because, for example, in the United States, they have 45 million people living in poverty, of whom 15 million people of them are children who don't know when or if their second meal is coming.
Yeah.
So you have millions of Americans who are denied basic health services. You have, I think there are about 2,000 or 3,000 places in the United States that have poisoned water. You have all these things, and the reason is they're spending, half of the country's income on war. But when you spend money on war, the money doesn't dissipate. It's not like it's disappearing. It's just going from the public treasury that's supposed to be used for the good of the people in that country to kill people in other countries, and a huge profit for the people who are administrating these businesses, because it's an industry.
Yeah, they're using the state as their trough. They are basically, it's a way to plunder the state.
Absolutely.
The same you see in healthcare industry. It's not, the sickness industry. The prices for medicine over there, and everywhere there they profit. But now we're at America. I still want to say about...
sorry. Everything is connected, you see.
Right.
The point is that when a superpower goes to war somewhere, so they have to sell you the war. They have to convince people in their own country that that country is so horrible off. The leaders are blood drinking, sadist, crazy people, gassing their own people, which is one of the memes, for the Syrian crisis. Oh, he's gassing his own people. Very easy to understand. and it's been illustrated with a lot of horrible images, and people just respond emotionally. And this is a technique that's well known for anybody who has studied propaganda. What you want is an extreme, strong and powerful emotional reaction in the viewer, because you can come with tons of facts afterwards to tell them, no, it's not like this, look at that, and it doesn't matter. The impact in their emotions have been made. That's the truth that they're going to rely on, and you can sell them the wars. I will tell you, there's millions of people in the West who keep repeating, oh, Assad, he's a horrible dictator, he's killing his own people.
No, but more and more, I would say the middle class, because the really poor people, they dumb people down and they make them poor. They're not even interested. They don't, Syria, Iraq, I don't know I don't know, no, they don't have the energy.
At the time.
Whatever, the education. So for them, it's just a blur of something they can't relate to. They need food on the table today.
But at the same time, the poor people are the ones who have the most solidarity.
Oh, yeah. On a personal basis, yes.
Yeah, if they woke up and saw the class aspect of all this, they would certainly become a force in society. But as you say, they don't have the energy because of the austerity politics. They don't have, even if they work full time, they can't even have a living wage. So they work.
And the richer you are, statistically, this is scientifically verified, the more psychopathic you are.
Yes, this is correct.
So this is a correlation here, but it's your prerogative to rant on as you freely want, and it's my duty to gently guide this, right?
Yeah.
And I'll try to guide it now back to the fact that we're going to get to the politics, but I'm so impressed with they have half of Syria is desert.
It's like 56-58%.
Yeah, more than half, and they export food even under the war.
Yes, they do.
And they have an organic agriculture. Oh my God.
Yes, but they used to have that in Iraq as well. The first things the Americans did when they took over was because Iraq, as in Syria, they have a huge tradition for seeds. They collect seeds. Right. It's like hundreds, maybe thousands of years old tradition. So the first the American administration who were put up in Iraq did, they gave all the rights to Monsanto. They practically destroyed like thousands of years of agricultural tradition.
Jesus.
And so it's there. I don't know if it's 100% organic, but a lot of it is. And during the crisis, because they couldn't sell to their ordinary customers, there has been export. Yeah, I mean, if Europe doesn't want their lemons, they should find others. But of course, the export has suffered immensely, and also, the terrorists they target important infrastructure like the corn silos and other important things that also targeted the agriculture.
Yeah. And we're told by our media, we're going to go back to media critic later, but we are told that, Assad is a dictator, and this is a dictatorship, and people are so suppressed, and it's the regime, right? The regime, you know French, that just means government. But anyway, we will get to the memes and the words. But let's get some few facts about Syrian politics.
Yeah, so, the one of the accusations against Syria was that the previous president was the current president's father, and he took over a shipwreck of a country because everybody tried to colonize it, and it was just, total instability, and so people say that he used a tough hand. Most probably he did, and you have to. There were groups who were trying to terrorize and make their own little power positions. And in 1982 there was an uproar, uprising. It depends what you want to call it, but the people behind it was the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right.
And the Muslim Brotherhood, that's not nice people, and so for sure there were rough methods. I don't know. I can't say there was. I can't say there wasn't. But it would be strange if there weren't. Like in any type of situation where you have people taking up arms against the government, no country in the world will accept that. And then the current president became president. He was not supposed to. It was his brother who was supposed to, but he did. This eye doctor, he's very mild-mannered and extremely well-spoken. If you see interviews with him, you will see that he's been consistent since he came to power. Up until now, he's been very consistent.
You can even see him interviewed in English, so you don't need to rely on translations.
Yeah, he speaks very good English, and I really recommend people to do so and to really listen, because his message has been consistent all the time, and he is so faithful to his country and to the principles of the pan-Arabism, which is that it's one people. You know, we are all Syrians and we all belong here. And then there used to be only one political party, they say, but actually the National Socialist Party, I think, I'm not quite sure, but it's really old. It was founded in the 20s. And the first women organizations are almost 100 years old, maybe more. So women have been well represented for...
And I mean, they have a much better democracy than, let's say, USA, because, I mean, they have everything from nationalists to communists.
Yeah, they have...
they have religious parties, they have everything.
Yeah, they don't really have religious parties. That's one thing. You can't, because they want to... No, I don't think so.
What about the Muslim Brotherhood then?
That is not a political party. They are not on any list. Like if you you go on the list of political parties, you have like 3, 4, 5, 6 socialist parties. You have 3 communist parties. You have the Social Nationalist Party. You have different sort of names with democratic in them, and then of course you have the biggest one, the Socialist Ba'ath Party, and that's a socialist party, which means that and that's what you saw in Iraq as well, you know, they have services for the people as a huge priority. So all health services are free, all education, including university, is free, housing is inexpensive, and so you have all these services that for many Western people are huge expenses. For example, higher education in many Western countries is way out of reach for people with...
But that means they don't have poverty, they have high education.
No, they do have poverty. Oh, no, of course they do. Yes, absolutely, they do. But still there are services that are also accessible for free.
Yeah, but did people die of hunger before the war?
I have never heard about that.
Obviously they have poverty, but I mean like that kind of poverty.
No, I've never heard about that. And also you have to think about this. During the crisis or the invasion of Iraq, more than 1 million Iraqi came to Syria.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe even close to 2 million. Huge number of people.
And they also have Palestine refugees. Yeah.
Yes, more than 500,000 Palestinian refugees. You don't have a single refugee camp in the sense that we could think of camps with tents and whatnot. Yeah. People open their homes. It's actually illegal to have tent camps in Syria. Wow. And I visited a refugee camp when I was there in April now, where there were 17,000 people, no tents, building.
Okay, so they live decent.
I would say relatively decent, and people own their homes. Contrary to the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon, because on my way to Syria, I was also in the Shatila camp in Beirut, which the living conditions are really, really bad, and they have no rights. For example, as a Palestinian, you can't work, you can't buy. And for example, there's a Palestinian woman living in Norway, and she bought an apartment in Beirut, but because she's Palestinian, she's not allowed to rent it to anybody. And if she doesn't present herself there, like every 3 or 6 months, they will expropriate it and sell it. But in Syria, they enjoy all civil rights. But some people say, yeah, but they don't get citizenship. And of course not. Because that's the point of making life miserable for Palestinians in the occupied areas. If they take another citizenship, they don't have the right to return anymore, you see?
Yeah, and they're rid of them, yeah.
Yes, then they're rid of them. So
I think we'll get to Israel and their tactics too. But you said in your lecture that there were over 1,000 candidates who wanted to...
That the parliament did, because, so you see, people say dictatorship. So what's a dictatorship? Well, there's a definition for a dictatorship. In a dictatorship, all power is in the hands of one person or a very small group of people. Okay? So obviously that's not the case in Syria, since they have a parliament with 250 representatives from all over Syria. So each region have their regional representative, just like in most other countries that have parliamentarism. And in the parliament in Syria, there are people from different political parties and 50 representatives who are non-partisan, who are dissident. So obviously this can't be a dictatorship. But even if so this eliminates the idea that Syria is a dictatorship, because you have 250 elected representatives in the parliament.
And you have a female speaker even.
Oh yeah, you have lots of women in high positions in Syria. Absolutely. But obviously, and then you have the presidential election, and anyone of 18 who's born in Syria can become a presidential candidate. And for the parliament, there were 1,000 people running for office, so 250 got to the place. And in the presidential election, there were also several candidates. But obviously, President Assad got a majority of votes. And this is something that really annoys me, because when I talk to people and I say, well, they had elections, they'll go, yeah, elections. Yeah, like they can have free and fair elections. Yeah, they can.
In fact, they are more free and fair than in America.
Yeah.
And the elections, they say like, there's election fraud, whatever. I'd rather give my physical vote in Syria that's counted by a living person than going to an American voting machine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In 2014, there was a presidential election. And in most, I think maybe all, except Sweden, the countries refused Syrian embassies to arrange for people to come and vote.
Wow.
They didn't want to let Syrians vote. So what happened?
They sabotaged the Syrian election.
Yeah, they did. So what did Syrians do? They chartered airplanes to Beirut to vote. And I've been to the Syrian embassy in Beirut. It's not big. And there were, I don't know, when you look at the videos, it looks like hundreds of thousands. They have to stay open an extra day. It was immense runs. People wanted to vote, but they didn't vote. They were refugees. These were people outside of Syria. They really wanted to vote. And who did they vote for? In the majority voted for President Assad. These were people who were outside of Syria. They wanted to vote. Now, the only countries who did not accept the outcome of the votes are the same countries who have been working for regime change since, people say it started in 2011. No. The plans for it has been laid out in 1986. Declassified CIA documents show that the exact recipes by using jihadis. I mean, the whole thing is outlined in 1986. So, and there were observers from different countries. I don't remember where the observers came from, but there were observers from countries like they have in most elections, and they were very satisfied. So it's only the countries responsible for regime change who did not accept the outcome of the election.
But Sweden didn't sabotage it. I'm so amazed about that. Good on them.
Yeah, Sweden is not a NATO member.
Right. There
They still have a little bit of independence, but it's getting close, They are starting to do that, yeah.
And if it wasn't for the fact that they're attacked, I don't think Assad would get that much support. It's natural in times of war, when there's an exterior enemy, everybody bands together. It happens everywhere since time immemorial. So if people really wanted to get rid of Assad, they should immediately stop attacking the country, and they should leave it to the real opposition. Because they're very educated. You said yourself that they have free all the way up to university free, right?
And they learn about democracy in school. They learn about politics. Whereas in our countries, they don't. I have 2 kids. They didn't learn anything of these things in school. But of course, the war made him immensely popular, not because he's some kind of mythical superhero, but people saw the leadership. Mm-hmm. They saw the leadership. The people who are behind this war, they have extremely efficient intelligence. They try to get anything on God. And I'm not saying this for myself. I'm quoting one of the representatives from the opposition. Yeah. Because each time I went, I had a meeting with one of the representatives for the National Socialist Party who was in opposition to the Ba'ath Party. And he said, that he actually quoted, he talked about Mossad, and he said, they are the experts to find dirt on people. they will find anything. They were not able to find anything on Assad. He has been offered billions. He could go anywhere in the world. And people know this, and he stayed. Why does he stay in Syria? He doesn't have to. Is it because he's some kind of power-hungry, crazy maniac who wants to rule over his people? So many of the Syrians that I've talked to said that, yeah, we used to see him in the street all the time, driving or even walking, and you could go up to him and shake his hand. And, we are so used to despising our leaders so much that it is impossible for us to imagine that in other places people can actually like and admire their leaders.
Yeah. But I mean, it's no wonder, because even during the war, the civil institutions are still standing, right?
They are. And this is something that we don't know. And that's important, because if you should make if you should create an impression of what Syria is like from the mainstream media, look at the photo material that we've been presented. It's all rubbles, all bombed out buildings, which are not actually bombed, because you can see when a building is bombed and when there's been a shootout. There's a huge difference. People with white helmets on their head running towards the camera with a baby in their arms. When you put together all the different photos that we've been presented from Syria, you will see, wow, they all look the same. And that's the reason why I went the first time last year, because I was so, angry, or I don't know what word to use, over this fake imagery that are
pure fabrication.
Yeah, pure fabrication. And they pretended like the 90% of the Syrian people did not exist. There was Assad and poor civilians running away from bombs. They did not show any terrorists. They did not show any soldiers. Soldiers have died to protect their homeland. Imagine that, 150,000 ordinary Syrians, because the Syrian army...
Yeah, tell us, who is the Syrian army?
Yeah, the Syrian army is the people. It's the people. And it's people from all religions. It's just ordinary people. Of course, you have some professional officers and so forth, like you have in every country, but it's an army of the people. It's not mercenaries. It's ordinary people. And the atrocities that have been committed by the terrorists to the Syrian soldiers is just disgusting. And, the terrorists, they love to brag. There is so much material on the internet. Some have been deleted by YouTube. I hope somebody have downloaded everything, because it's evidence.
We know they're eating hearts.
Yeah.
Imagine if you're a normal citizen and you hear that Daesh, which is,
But he was not from Daesh, I have to tell you. The guy who took a bit, the terrorist.
It's not just one guy. Many people.
Well, yeah, but he was like one of the first to come out on the net. That's a guy from Free Syrian Army that was one of the so-called moderates and cooperatives of United States. Yeah, he cut open the chest of a Syrian soldier that he killed, and took a bite of his heart and one more organ, I think, and threatened, yes, Bashar al-Assad, this is what we're going to do to your dogs. But there are tons of material of executing prisoners of war, which is completely a war crime, torture, rape, decapitation.
Put the heads on spikes.
Yeah. It's like, if you want to summarize what has happened to Syria, it's like somebody let loose a splatter movie on their country.
Yep, the hounds of hell are loose.
Yeah, the hounds of it is not an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration.
And it just came like this, bam! People think it comes from their own, they are fundamentalists. It's imported most of the terrorists are imported. Mercenaries.
Yeah, mercenaries, yeah. Most of them, well, the thing is, and this is something that I said early on in Norway, where people were just, I said, look, the people are joining ISIS, for example. Maybe, I'll admit, maybe some of them are like really fanatical, newborn Muslims, maybe that's okay. I can believe that. And it's just by coincidence that it's Daesh that they're joining. They could just as well have become football hooligans. These are the lost kids who are just looking for adventure and belonging, because the recruiting videos that they put out on the net, they're very seducing. It's a brotherhood, riding horses,
emotional.
Very, very emotional.
Identity. Come here, join us.
All the cliches. But and I did this in an interview on the radio like early 2015. I said, but the people behind this are totally cynical. They don't care about religion and that. This is a criminal syndicate. And this, of course, has been exposed. They used a lot of the same mercenaries that they used in Libya. Some of them have been identified from Chechnya. It was the same. They did the same against Russia, but Russia managed to crush it early. But that's what happened in Chechnya. I don't know how to say it in English. Chechnya.
Chechnya.
Yeah. So this is an old recipe. It's recycling of mercenaries. And Turkey, a NATO country, if they had closed their borders right away, this thing would have been over in 3 months. But they went back and forth all the time. And I've met people who have been eyewitnesses from people from Gaziantep. It's a Turkish town just across the border from Syria. And they said, yeah, it's easy. You just pay $1,000 each way and they let you through. Yeah. So Turkey has been hugely involved in this from the beginning. And last year I went to Aleppo, and this is the thing. You read these horror stories about Aleppo in December 2016, just before the liberation. It was insane. The propaganda and the media frenzy was something we've never seen before. And they gave us the impression that the whole town was bombed, it was in ruins, and people were starving and this and that. But actually, it's a part of the city that had been sieged by the terrorists, the eastern part. And there was a lot of destructions, but you could see there had not been a lot of bombing because, when you bomb something, it's being destroyed from above. Yeah. But there had actually been shootouts, house from house to house, and the Syrian government, they made corridors. They tried to save as many civilians as possible, so they made these corridors and they dragged out time. They tried to bargain with the terrorists and this and that. But the western part of the city was completely intact, except for the fact that almost 15,000 people in western Aleppo had been killed by missiles and rockets and mortars from the terrorists in the eastern part of Aleppo. Now, have you heard about that in your media? No, you have not. And tens of thousands more have been, injured for life. So they told the tale of Al-Qaeda in the eastern Aleppo. They didn't tell us about all the civilians who were under siege, but when they came out, when the city was, or that part of the city was liberated by the Syrian army, people talked. They told us about the conditions. Did we hear about that in the Western media? No. When Aleppo was liberated, everything went silent. Did they rejoice? The people were free? No. They lost interest.
Do you think the leaders in countries like our own got that information? I mean, to what extent are they idiots, or to what extent are they cowards? That's the big question.
Yeah, and that's a very important question. Who are you listening to? Who are your
advisors?
And who's because there have only been two sources of information, and that's Al-Qaeda, who controlled all the information coming out of the besieged areas like East Aleppo, Eastern Ghouta, Idlib now. And I don't know, I can't give you the answer, but I have access to the information, which means they should have access to the information. Yeah. But unfortunately, my country is what we can call a puppet government, completely under the thumb of the United States. Yeah. We don't have an independent foreign policy. No. I'm sad to say so, but that's a fact.
And there's no difference if it goes from the conservatives to the socialists?
No, there's no difference. For example, if there was how do you call it? They all voted yes to bomb Libya. Yeah. But there is not a single public document to show the process. It was all done by SMS and blackmailing and so on.
Against their own laws.
Yeah, against our own constitution.
In fact, they're starting to be a sweat now. In the future, if we restore some sort of democracy, they can be in big trouble. They could get...
they're all war criminals.
Yep.
Yeah.
But obviously in the areas where the terrorists, the fundamentalists take over, there, of course, the civilian... institutions collapses, right? And it becomes barbary. It becomes extreme fascism, 10 times worse than Stalin and Hitler's regimes. But how are they able to keep up hospitals, pharmacies, schools, libraries? And I think you said even that...
You mean in the free areas or?
In the free areas. And you said even that they had the biggest cancer hospital or something like that.
No, that was the Al-Kindi hospital. It was the biggest and most, advanced cancer treating hospital in the whole Middle East. You can see it's on YouTube how they bomb it. They drive the terrorists.
Yeah.
They drive a big truck of explosives into the hospital, which is full of patients, scientists, doctors, and they bomb it and they destroy it. Yeah, that was about 2014, I think. I don't remember.
And people free.
Yeah, it was all free.
If you were there, if an American was there as a tourist and something happened, you get treatment.
Yeah, you would get free treatment.
More than you get in your own country.
Yeah. And can you imagine? This is something that Americans should know. There is no hostility against American citizens. I've been traveling with Americans in Syria. I've been traveling with Americans in Iran. They are so well treated and welcomed. And they have every reason to despise Americans actually for what their government has been doing to their country.
Yeah, but I think many of them understand that ordinary Americans are brainwashed.
They do. Everyone. I've never heard a single hostile word against American people from anyone I met in Syria on both my trips, nor in Iran, where I was last year in August.
So they realize it's the regime, right? The American regime.
Yeah, they understand the difference more than the American people themselves. So I would really wish that people all over, but maybe in particular Americans, because recently I was in a Facebook discussions in a really dear friend who's really nice. I mean, he's like a yogi and he works with Tai Chi. He's like the most peaceful guy you can imagine. But and he's not political on Facebook at all, but he got so frustrated because he feels like there's so much hate and division in the United States. So it's sort of developed. And when I came into the thread and tried to highlight, hey, Americans, we need you to wake up to what your governments are doing around the world. They are completely oblivious. They don't know and they don't want to know. And they all agreed after a while, not all of them, but quite a few of them agreed. Yeah, she has to be a Russian troll.
Yeah.
So
always blame the messenger.
Yeah, but I wonder when are Americans going to wake up and stand up, because they are the ones paying for all this. All these wars are paid by American tax dollars.
Yeah, don't worry. We don't have time to discuss American politics, but the fact that Clinton lost is just the beginning. Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, back to Syria. So I came to Syria in April 2017 for the first time, and all my expectations were met in this that people are living their life as well as they can. There were, even then in April 2017, there were less soldiers in the street in Damascus, which was under mortar attack every single day, than in Paris. France is under martial law. People don't know this. Syria is not.
Wow.
They never closed the internet. Imagine that. They never closed the internet. Students are taking their exams. Children are going to school, although in great danger. 10,000 people have been killed by mortars in Damascus. I told you about Aleppo already.
But what about these waves of refugees that came?
Yeah, there are millions. Yeah, well, they just manage. I mean, it's a strain on the city for sure. In one of the areas...
No, I mean that came to Europe, including Norway.
Oh, yeah, that's another thing.
Yeah. I just have to say, I've always been skeptical to the claim, and because the problem for the powers that be is that they've seen an anti-war movement that worries them, because today you have both on the right-wing side and the left-wing side potential for huge anti-war movement. So they need to split those two. They can't have people come together despite left and right-wing, right? So one of the things they can use to pacifize, to ruin, for the right wing is the fear of refugees, because the right wings are much more concerned about that than the left wing. And there was this meme that, the terrorists are coming among the refugees. And I thought that was weird, because Al-Qaeda, Daesh, all these people have so much money, passports, you name it. They can send 100 expert terrorists to any country in the world with the ordinary plane, just going to the airport today. if they wanted to. So I don't see why they would need to. Yeah, plus many of them are imported already. And if you see, like in England, they took the passports of English people who went and joined terrorists in Libya. And then the intelligence gave them back to them when the Syria thing happened, because they needed them to get to Syria. So you have, they're even facilitated by the intelligence, and we'll get to that in part 2 after the break. We're going to get more into the structures behind. But so I've always been critical to the claim that all these refugees, because if I lived in any Syrian city or any city in the world, and there were like these hellish hounds coming here, they're going to butcher, they're going to rape and kill my wife, they're going to sell my daughters into slavery, they're going to cook and eat my son, they're going to crucify me, put my head on a spike, they're going to demolish entire society. Obviously, I'll either fight or I'll flee. Okay, so obviously many refugees were generated by this. So what do you say? Sorry for going on like this, but I just needed to get it out.
No. I think what you say is probably accurate. I'm not going to have a strong opinion on. I think you are right, but I also know that I spoke to Faris Shahabi, who is an independent parliamentarian from Aleppo.
Yeah.
And he said that there are lots of people going to Europe who are terrorists, and that they know who they are, but Western intelligence don't want to cooperate with them. They know all about their families, the money, everything.
Why would you mean Western intelligence doesn't want to cooperate with Syrian intelligence?
They don't want to cooperate with Syrian officials. No. So of course the big guns, the buses, they have money. For example, when Eastern Ghouta was being liberated, they bargained with the terrorists. For example, in Eastern Aleppo, I don't know if you know about the green buses. They bargained. So,
tell us about that.
Yeah, Syria from day one of the crisis, an amnesty program. So whenever an area becomes liberated, they have the option, the people there. They could either lay down their arms and they get full amnesty and they can go back to society. Or if they don't want to do that, they get to keep their arms, the light arms, not the big tanks and everything, but their own personal arms. And they can go to Idlib, which is like the last hub of terrorists. Okay.
Why would they do that?
And that's very intelligent. It's just, what are they going to do? If they are going to chase down and kill every terrorist, it's the body count of civilians will be very high. The sacrifice will be too high. They do this to protect civilians. And also to give people the chance to come back to society. Yeah. Syria is going to live on. You have to think about the future, Yeah. See, this is in direct opposition to what the Americans do, like they did in Raqqa. They just bombed everything, destroyed everything, make it inhabitable, so they can place the people they want there. It's a sort of occupation.
Yeah.
So leaving Aleppo, there were all these green buses, and rumors have it, I haven't seen it confirmed, but I'm quite certain, because they did find, foreign people, and their UN ambassador named them in a meeting in the UN, Israelis, Saudis, different sort of nationalities. And certainly there were a lot of them going out, and this was a bargain thing. There's a lot of bargaining going on behind the scene. And the Syrian government is doing this to protect civilians, because look, they could have bombed Eastern Aleppo to hell and killed all of the terrorists, but didn't. So they have the same program going all over. Now I forgot your initial question, why I asked about that. But yeah, the terrorists going to Europe.
Yeah.
Okay, so before these things happened, in Eastern Ghouta, which was liberated not long ago, a couple of months ago, they found huge networks of tunnels. And I'm not talking about the little tunnels where you have to crawl. Tunnels where you can drive huge trucks.
Okay.
Super professional. You can't imagine how modern it was.
Underground facilities, I see, yeah.
Underground with field hospitals, everything you can imagine. And who delivered the cement for all this? Yeah,
Turkey.
It's Lafarge. Lafarge is a French cement company. And there's actually a Norwegian who's in detention in France for terrorist money, transport, different sort of accusations. Okay. So the big guns who were in Eastern Ghouta, they probably before, but the ones who were staying, who did not want to take the amnesty, who said they wanted to go to Idlib, one of their conditions was they wanted to bring $900 million in cash with them. Where did that money come from? They have so much money. So what you said about the Daesh people having money and just buying passports and coming to Europe is...
intelligence contacts. They can get passports, anything, yeah.
Everything, yeah. They have been working. Who are their bosses? What is Daesh? What is it?
We'll get to that,
so
Kari, but...
No, the point is that what you said is most certainly accurate, that some of them, the big chiefs of terrorist organization, are so connected and so well funded, they can travel freely all over the world.
But I imagine if there's terrorists among the refugee wave, that must be terrorists who just decided, fuck it, I'm going home, or I'm finding a better life for myself. I don't want to fight here. You see what I mean?
Yes.
There may be terrorists,
exactly.
but they're not there to. They're not in operation. Because if they were in operation, they could come in a first class plane to wherever in the world they wanted, right? They don't have to go on boats.
It's not that easy. It's not as easy as that anymore, with electronic passports. I mean, I'm not an expert in that, but I can only quote people that I've met in Syria who said for sure there are terrorists among the refugees going to Europe, for sure.
Yeah, or on operation, like they...
No, not on a mission.
No, that's
not on a
my
mission.
Point. Right.
No. And they also said, like Faris Shahabi said, look, you have hundreds, probably thousands of homegrown terrorists in your own country who have been in Syria, cutting people's heads off, committing atrocities.
And they're allowed to come home.
Well, of course.
The Norwegian state doesn't take the passport away from them.
But what do you mean? Are we going to dump them in Syria and leave the problem to Syria? This is the big dilemma now. Like some ministers of foreign affairs in some European countries, because they had a big summit and they were discussing what the hell are we going to do with these people? Yeah. Some wanted to kill them, and there is a lot of killing going on where they say it's between the different groups. We don't know. There is a lot of killing going on. Some say, we'll tell them that if they come home, they will take their citizenship away from them, because I'm sure some of them receive benefits from their own country just to stay out of the country, like from Britain and this and that. So they don't know what to do. But I'll tell you one example. There's a woman who used to be in ISIS, and she's caught now. She's in the custody of Kurdish militias.
Great.
And there's a Norwegian politician who's in love with the Kurdish whole Kurdish thing.
Oh, I know. He's from the Greens, right?
No, he's in the Red Party, the before so-called Communist Party.
Okay.
But he's been into the Kurdish people for ages, and he's been to Syria 30 times, and he's gone into Syria illegally many, many times. But he talks about northern Syria and Assad's Syria. So he's a little bit, but that's not the point. The point is that she's now in custody of the Kurds.
Oh, okay.
This Norwegian politician brings home a handwritten letter from this woman begging to come home to Norway. And he's saying, it's just for a couple of Norwegian policemen to go to Iraq and take the boat over to Syria and bring her home. Like he's trying to make Norwegian police going legally into Syria to take with them an ISIS criminal. He's just fantasizing. But the point is, he should have given, if he was in contact with this criminal, he should have contacted the Syrian police. Because we have to understand that these people who are considered terrorists in our country, when they were in Syria, they were called rebels.
Oh.
That's the big difference, you see?
Mm.
Because al-Nusra, all these Al-Qaeda bands, groups, all the crimes committed in Syria, they were called rebels. Had they done in Europe, they would have been called terrorists. So it's,
of course.
Yeah. Well, was a long rant, but I think, probably a lot of them have money and passports, but according to Syrians, there are also some of them who are among the so-called refugees.
Yeah, I can believe that, but I think, yes, like you say, it's on the bottom level, and but it's interesting because it's almost as if the globalists then want to flood countries with refugees.
Yeah.
And
it's an industry.
Make sure that there are some terrorists among them, because but my point is believing that we won't take any of these refugees, that won't save you. So first off, America, I know you didn't want to take any refugees, and you almost didn't compared to many other countries, but as long as you're behind this goddamn war, you goddamn take them too. Because it should be a law, it should be a rule that if you start a war like Norway did with Libya, then you're gonna take the bill too.
Yeah.
That's one. And two, refusing to take the refugees is also insane. First off, it's just the decency. When people run away from this shit, you're going to open your door for them. Or if not, then stop fucking up the countries. That's one. But the other is, if there's even terrorists among them, that's not a reason to stop. If there's one terrorist among 1,000 refugees, it doesn't help.
Anyway, it's impossible. It doesn't.
But it doesn't help you stopping them, even if you hold out that one terrorist, because those terrorists can get to America anytime they want. 9/11, that people that started all this as a meme at least, they had no problem. They were facilitated. Many of them were facilitated by intelligence, and we're going to get to that. But as long as we have no control over intelligence agencies, we can't stop terrorism either. It's that simple.
But, USA has taken in practically no refugees compared to the size of the country.
Exactly.
Germany has 1 million refugees.
Yeah.
But there's a big difference between a refugee and an immigrant.
Yeah.
So what happened when they destroyed Libya? Because Libya was like a cork in the bottle. So many West Africans went to Libya, they got work, they could feed their families at home, they could even bring their families.
And Gaddafi tried to get Africa over to a union, independent of the globalists and central bank that were loyal to them.
Yes.
Not to the international banksters. He had so many plans. He wanted to go away from the dollar.
Yes. And you don't do that and not get punished.
No.
We've seen that with other countries as well. But the point is that Libya was the frontier. The immigration stopped there because they found work.
Yeah.
And they could stay on the continent. And he warned Europe. He said the sea will go black.
Yeah.
If you destroy us. And that's exactly what happened. But you have to understand that the migration, the mass migration, is a huge syndicate. It's organized crime. It's not like poor people finding some sort of rubber boat. This is organized. Videos of Libyan coast guards whipping the people into the boat and pushing them out from the shore. It's a huge moneymaker. Human trafficking is one of the most lucrative businesses.
Right. Yeah, of course, I figure the poorest people, they end up in local camps, a refugee camp, because they don't have any means to get to Europe.
No, but these are not even people who will go to a refugee camp. I mean, this is mass migration. And lots of people who have come to Europe who claim to be Syrian, I mean, they don't even know what the capital of Syria is.
Yeah.
This is a huge business.
Right.
Of course, there are legitimate refugees, but most of the Syrians are displaced within their country, in Lebanon, in different countries around. So you have to differentiate, because huge numbers who have come to Europe is organized. People have been enticed and encouraged to come. But, well, I'm not going to have an opinion on it, but there are a lot of elaborations on how this is a wanted destabilization of Europe. And you see the countries who refuse to take any immigrants or refugees, like Hungary, are being demonized in the EU. But they say, hey, we have no part in this war. Why should we pick up the pieces behind you?
Is it Viktor Orban? Is that his name?
Yeah.
I agree with him on that. And there was in America law that suggested, what is it called again? It was a suggestion for a law that says precisely what I just said, and that is that you have to take responsibility for the wars you're gonna...
Yeah, but the biggest war crime is making war.
Yeah.
And initially, when we started our talk, I said, you don't even need to know anything about Syria to know what's right or wrong. In this case and any other war, what are these things? It's one, sovereignty.
Yeah.
Every country is sovereign, which means they have defined borders that are, I don't know what the word in English is, but you cannot cross the border without permission.
Mm.
Yeah. And then you have international law. And it's against international law to wage war against another country. In fact, it's against I don't know how to call it in English, the statute of the UN.
Statutes.
Yeah. A UN member country does not have the right to go to war to another UN member country. So what do? They don't call it war. Technically, United States, for example, is not in war against Syria. No. They're just training people, or they use other words.
It's a proxy war, yeah.
Yeah, so they don't call it, because there are rules for waging war. Like, for example, in the United States, you have to have Congress's approval to go to war. So you have to call it something else.
Yeah, but even that they have broken. And still there's no repercussion.
No, they don't care. And what is the Congress? The Congress is a representation of the people. So they did the same in Norway. They do things in Norway. The government is doing things without going through the parliament, and the parliament is the people. So they are acting against the will of the people.
And against the rule of the...
And against the rule, because we have international law. So even though you don't know the first thing about Syria, you can have an opinion on the aggression and the invasion of Syria. And this is important, because a lot of people, they say, oh, this war in Syria, it's so complicated, I don't know what to think. And, so they're afraid to express an opinion, so they just stay quiet. This is what I'm saying. You don't need to know the first thing about Syria, because even though, let's say, that Syria was a dictatorship, like many other countries that USA is super buddies with. So even though if it were a dictatorship with even a very mean dictator, that would not give any other country the right to invade or do anything to that country. That's all you need to know. You see, if you know that, you can have an opinion.
Yeah.
People challenge you and say, yeah, well, what do you know about Syria or this and that? And he's so mean, he's killing those people, blah, blah, blah. Stop. So is because obviously in the United States, if we are talking about that country, but we could many other countries, they are killing their own people.
I always go to Saudi Arabia. You know why?
Yeah.
Because that is probably the worst country in the world today.
The thing is, we don't know much about Saudi Arabia.
I'd rather live in North Korea, which is also...
Oh, I would love to live in North Korea. I know lots of people have been to North Korea.
By the way, American audience, pot is legal in North Korea. So you could chill there, live as a slacker. If you live in Saudi Arabia, you are... What did you say? People don't know what's going on there?
No, listen, we were talking about the media and you said we were coming back to it. But just a few, half a year ago or so, I tweeted, where are Saudi Arabia? We don't see them. And obviously all the Twitter funny people said, oh, Kari Jaquesson thinks there's no people living in Saudi Arabia. That was, of course, not my point. The point is that who do we see? What do we see in the media? We see the royal family. That's all we see. We don't know anything about Saudi Arabia. We don't know anything about the millions of people living there.
No, they have no voice.
We don't know that 25% of the people who live in Saudi Arabia...
We know they're being head chopped, okay, by the government. We know they are chopping off their heads.
Yeah, that we know, but there are tens of millions of people living there. And, a quarter of them live in poverty. We don't see them. We just see the lavish lifestyle of the Saudi family. So... yeah, maybe it's the worst country in the world. We don't know. The point is that it's none of our business what other countries do. That's what we have to just get into our heads. And all the time, we can assume that the conditions there are not very well, because that is really, let's call it a dictatorship. It's run by a royal family. They don't even have a constitution.
No.
So we can assume that for many people, the living conditions are not good.
Royal family. Stop calling them royal. The real royal was ousted by the British 100 years ago. His name was, Lawrence of Arabia, the movie, all that. There was a true king.
Yeah. Well, that's the country's name is from the family Saud. It's like, I think it's... Yeah.
Exactly. They were just some damn dirty monkeys that they found in the desert. Fanatical, degenerated beasts who, we're going to kiss Britain's ass. And they ousted the real king.
Yeah.
A beautiful humanitarian. He said the Jews can live here, the Christians can live here, the Muslims can live here.
Oh, but there was a huge Jewish community, and that actually some people say that even the family was Jewish. The there was never any troubles between Jews and Christians and Muslims in that region before the colonists came.
Exactly.
It was just fine.
And the British started this shit. They started the real bad shit. Then the Nazis, believe it or not, took over in the 30s. Because fundamentalism, radical Islam, as they say in America, but the real name is Islamism, political Islam. It's not the same as Islam, Islamism. Takfiri, Salafi. It started basically with this lunatic Wahhabi thing in the 150 years ago. Now the British propped them up because they wanted control. They wanted the Turks out because the Turks, the Ottomans were running the show, and they wanted to take over all the resources, etc. So they weaponized these people and they financed them and they supported them. And what happened? The Nazis took over in the 30s and all the way to the 60s. Exile Nazis tried to prop them up after the war against Israel. Israel, meanwhile, was, of course, established by the same Brits. That's when the Brits lost these people. They went over to the Nazis. And in the 70s, CIA took over from the Nazis. The CIA trained Osama bin Laden. We know all this. Originally as a bulwark against the Soviets. Now, it's very interesting that in the view of academicians, all these fanatical people, the Wahhabists, they were always working for us, for the West, except 9/11. Then they were miraculously independent. And then they went back to work for us, in Libya they worked for us, in Iraq they worked for us. Both Saddam in Iraq and Gaddafi in Libya offered the Western intelligence everything they needed to crush these people. They weren't interested. Why? Because they already knew these things. They needed them. They've always been our useful idiots. And today they work for us in Syria. And you know what, Kari? We're going to take a break now.
Yeah.
Before I get a heart attack. And when we come back, we're going to discuss more about the media lies and the truth behind what I started to ramble about now, about the real terrorists and where they come from. Because that's what I think people need to understand. People need to distinguish between normal countries and normal people on the one hand, and this artificial creation of a monster that's ruining. People complain that they're ruining America and Europe, the Western world, but more, and it's true. But more than that, they're ruining the Middle Eastern countries, the Middle Eastern world. They have much more problems with this. They have much more victims of terrorism than the West ever could get.
Yeah, you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
It's in France they had a couple of incidents. They have martial law that's now coming into the legislation.
It's so convenient.
In Syria they have tens of thousands of people killed by terrorists and 100,000 soldiers dying to protect the country from terrorists and superpowers.
Exactly.
And they don't have martial law. Can you imagine?
Yeah, and that's the way it's going. I'm so happy just that it doesn't happen in Norway yet, but we'll see. We'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah.
But people, we'll take a break now and we'll be back in a short while.
All of our files are free and will remain free. If you like the show, you can show support by donating $1 to help with expenses. Just use the PayPal link on our website, YouTube channel, or Facebook page. Thanks.